In this demonstration, we present DScribe, a template-based approach to code-generate tests and documentation. We implemented a tool to support DScribe for Java, which is described in a prior publication. Before demoing DScribe, let's understand its motivation. Normally, for each specification, we create a unit test and documentation fragment. The specification is thus redundantly captured in both assets. After producing both assets independently, we must also ensure that they evolve consistently. This is all the more tedious when the specification reoccurs across many functions. If the specification evolves, we must manually update each asset. Without traceability links, this is an effort-intensive and error-prone process. If you're anything like me, you're probably wondering, is there a better way? DScribe allows developers to define each specification once using simple templates. Then, using a single Java annotation, developers can generate unit tests and documentation in a consistent and streamlined fashion. To show DScribe in action, we use Apache Log4j2 as our use case. Log4j2 has a pattern converter interface that defines a format method. The method transforms and appends information from the inputted object to the inputted string builder. Log4j2 has over 100 unit tests with format as the focal method, each of which follows a very similar pattern. For example, here are two such tests. Both start by instantiating a log event, a string builder, and a pattern converter instance. They then call the focal method and use JUnit's assert equals method to validate the results. Despite their similarities, the tests have various code elements that differ. For example, both tests set a different log event field. They also instantiate different concrete pattern converters. And of course, they have different expected values. With DScribe, we can create templates that decouple the general concern being tested from the test case specific information. We do so by abstracting all test case specific information using placeholders, which are denoted by surrounding $signs. We can also reference the placeholders to generate descriptive test method names. This code skeleton is one of two components that comprise a DScribe template. The second component is a documentation fragment that describes the behavior under test. Here, the documentation fragment illustrates a usage example of format by referencing the placeholders. To finalize the template, we assign format as its name. The template creation step is the perfect time to consider which tests and documentation conventions your team wants to enforce. For example, here we've enhanced the format template by adding some common test conventions. Now, let's use this enhanced format template to generate assets. Suppose we want to test and document a format implementation that appends the log event's thread ID to the string builder. In DScribe, we invoke templates by adding a Java annotation that has the same name as the target template to the focal method. So, to use the format template, we add the format annotation to the focal method and provide values for each of its placeholders. The field that we want to set is thread ID. If we set the thread ID to 1, then the expected value is also 1. And the params value is used to instantiate the pattern converter. In this case, we just set it to null. We do not have to provide a value for the class placeholder because DScribe automatically derives it. To run DScribe using the Eclipse plugin, we simply right-click on the class and select Run DScribe. When generation is complete, a dialog appears listing all of the classes for which assets have been added or modified, as well as any errors that occurred. We can see that DScribe added the usage example to the format method. It also added a new unit test to the corresponding test class and automatically moved the annotation from the focal method to the generated test. This keeps production code clutter-free and helps developers discern which annotation is responsible for which test. To maintain a trace to the focal method, DScribe adds an additional member to the annotation called UUT, short for unit under test. If we want to update the usage example, say by changing the thread ID's value to 15, we simply modify the annotation's values and rerun DScribe. As you can see, DScribe successfully changed the placeholder values in both the test and the documentation fragment. To reduce the adoption cost of DScribe, we make available 6 predefined templates for common types of specifications. Here are all of the relevant links. Thank you for listening.